Welcome to Roots and Ruminants, your podcast for creative and innovative use of farm, pasture, and rangeland. We're going back to the basics of raising and grazing livestock, growing your own forage, and practical land use. Welcome to Roots and Ruminants. Jared and
Welcome.
Justin here. We're happy to have you. Just the two of us today. Haven't caught up with Justin in a while. And funny thing is like a lot of, Justin and I are kind of busy. Do a lot of the same things, similar things, but in different areas. I primarily focus on ag spire, primarily focuses on Millborn Renovo, and so a lot of our catch-up time is on the podcast. Like you might be a misconception that Justin and I talk like 5 to 10 hours a week and then once in a while do a podcast. This is most of when we get to catch up as well. So we are going to do what we kind of do usually once a season, where we just talk about things that are going on in our operations, things that are going on in the world, and catch up that way. So Justin, welcome to your own podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jared. It's nice to be on our own podcast. I'm excited to visit with you this morning.
I am excited as well.
This is going to be good.
Okay, give me a status of where your stock at.
Where the stock at? Okay, the stock.
Yeah, when you left the house this morning, where was everything at?
Hey, I actually drove by the corn stalk and cover crop field that the cows are on. We got about an inch of rain last night. Mm-hmm. Heavy, cold, wet rain. So sometimes, and the wind is blowing, and sometimes the cows like to just walk into the wind when it's cold like that. But they did not. They were still spread out, and they were happy. So, and the fence was hot enough, we'll say. It was quite wet. The electric fence was hot enough this morning. So all's good.
You're not going to have to go pour a gallon of water on your ground rod this morning.
No, we've got enough moisture down now. I tell you what, things always change fast, it seems like. And we went from extremely dry September, October to we're kind of greasy right now, but that's okay. We're happy as heck with where we're at for weather conditions. But cows are grazing corn, so a mixture of corn stalks and cover crops, actually. I've got them out there. The sheep are also on corn stalks and bean stubble. They've been out there a long time. I took like early October, we kind of got stuff out. They're just on easy mode, autopilot right now.
Nice.
But I think we got to start, we start lambing. That group, there's about there's 200 ewes on the stalks and bean stubble. That group starts lambing 1st of January, end of December. So they're gonna need a little protein and a little better feed here pretty soon, hitting late gestation. And what they've been on is pretty picked through. So I think at the end of this week we're gonna move stuff in. Mm-hmm. Calves are growing. We've got all the feeder calves are up and growing. Seems like they've been very healthy. Took to feed well. They've been weaned probably 3 weeks. I think the 1st of November we weaned. So
yeah, I don't want to jinx it, but we very healthy is a good way to put it. We've done some pulling and treating, but everything's responded really well. You look good.
Yeah, I agree. Getting hairy, looking fluffy.
Yeah, that's what this cold rain. They've had a good 6 weeks to acclimate this winter coat. It's a little different. If one of these kind of comes up in late September, which it could, we could very easily have a cold rain of 45 degrees in late September.
Yeah,
that's a little different than right now.
Yeah,
right now they got a pretty good coat on them.
This is true.
They're going to be okay. Plus, it gets a lot worse. There can be a lot worse weather the middle of November than 45.
Yeah, there's a lot of years we've got snow on the ground right now, and we're kind of grazing through a little bit of snow and freezing and thawing. And
it's like 10 below last year. Like last year, it was below zero at this time.
What about field projects? Put any fertilizer out? Do any late plantings?
They did not get my strip tilling done yet. They're about co-op's about 2,000 acres behind. I talked to the manager last night at the third grade girls basketball game last night is where I got an update on where my strip tilling was at. They're coming out. They're about 2,000 acres behind. They should be able to go. Like I said, we're kind of soft and wet, but I don't think we're not mucky like you are.
Okay.
So that's got to happen. Other than that, that is the last of the field work, other than the fencing and the replacing corner posts and things like that. Like we're down to that. We're down
Hmm.
to try to get ahead of some fencing for next year projects, which is
Yeah,
amazing. And that
I
is an
like it.
update as of about 18 hours ago. So we're finally there.
I I had those projects on the list probably 3 weeks ago. We
Yeah.
kind of done with stuff, and I didn't do it then, and
Oh, it's
old
amazing.
manure
Once you
instead, and that.
stop,
But jeepers.
once you let up, you're done. You're done. Like you can, it's like spring and summer. Spring and fall are the same.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
can
yeah.
start like whatever day you start in spring. If you start calving heifers the 1st of March, whatever, you can get on and stay on. As soon as you take a weekend off and go to the lake, you are done for the summer. It's over.
Tapped
Your
out.
productivity goes down by 75%. And it's the same in the fall. As soon as you get to the point where like, yeah, I have my project list done, boom, crashed, done, done. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is, but you can maintain such sustained productivity, and then it's just like once you lose your edge, it's over.
I feel like there's always one last big project to tackle, and then it seems like once that big one's done, it's like, well, those little ones, yeah, they're not nearly as important. We're just gonna let those slide until maybe next summer we'll get to those.
Or next year at this exact
Yeah,
same time, we'll
that's so
talk about
true.
them again and not actually do them. So my last big project, which got done 18 hours ago, 20 hours ago, uh, was a constellation of small grass plantings that I'm beholden to do for the neighborhood because I bought a functional 15-foot drill. And if anybody that's thinking about like, I don't own a drill, it'd be nice to have one. Be
Yeah.
wary of the consequences and new responsibilities that you will find yourselves in your neighborhood if you buy a 15-foot drill with native grass and small seed box capabilities, because you can say no 5 to 10 times on doing a 4 acre CRP feeding for an out of state landowner that
Yeah.
has ground 10 miles away, and somehow you can't get out of it. It's like it
You
just
want to be
keeps
doing your
coming back
plantings at
around.
night. Get get that thing on at night. Nobody's seeing it. You're out in the day. You're getting calls. Hey,
Right.
I see you're out doing a little planting with that drill. Boy, that
Yeah.
looks like a handy drill. What do you think
I
about
want
buzzing
to,
over to my section and
yeah.
finishing up these 2 acres?
I want to tell people that I'm going to sell it and then I'm renting it back, but it costs me $100 an acre to rent it, so I can't do theirs. That's what I want to tell people. I'm going to sell it to. I'm going to create an LLC, so I'm not lying. I'm going to create an LLC that owns this drill, and that's all it does. So I can say that I sold it and then pay rent into that LLC. I'm just kidding, but I don't know. Like it was the end of the season, and then you got to do those frost seeding. And we had a very
Yeah.
well, we had a long frost seeding window if you were okay with, but I was doing a lot of stuff that like alfalfa interseeding that kind of thing. I was like the 20th of October, I was like, it's too warm. Like this stuff might germinate. You know what I
Yeah, it
mean?
was.
Like, if it rains, like the soil temp is way warm enough for this thing to germinate. Never make it out of the ground. Have the tiniest little root system possible, and then be unviable the next year. So I was waiting for it to cool down enough. Finally got there. Felt like I had about 3 days to do it. Also had to wean a group of calves. Anyway, so I got it like I don't know, whatever. It was quite a few acres and like 7 or 8 different projects done.
But now is probably a better time, actually.
Yeah.
Like getting cold and like,
Oh, I think it was the only real good
yeah.
window to do it for. Like was like for a week, like really good window. I think I could have done it
Hmm.
earlier and been fine, but and that's when I had time to do it. Harvest was done, and calves are weaned and stuff. So
Doesn't your
now I'm ready.
conservation district have a drill?
Yeah, but we're like on the edge of the county, right? So we're 24 miles away from
Yeah,
the
that's a
county
haul.
seat,
Yep.
and then it's like everybody's like, it's always booked, and
Hmm.
you're down in the corner. So
I hear ya.
I'm in the edge of like four different counties that are all a long ways away from the county seats. Everybody's just kind of like it's too far.
Yeah. I have ours
Anyway,
booked for Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
how's
One
that
of
gonna
those
work?
days we're gonna
You're
get.
wetter than hell.
Well,
How are you
just
gonna work?
um, yeah, but the next 3 days look fairly dry. The wind is blowing like a
You
banshee.
think?
Yeah, I
You
think we'll
think
be
you're
able.
gonna be?
Here's what I'm thinking. Actually, it's
Yeah.
it's supposed to kind of start freezing actually a little bit too.
Okay.
It's amazing how fast it dries out when you freeze a couple times too. It's like the freeze dry cycle helps.
Sublimation.
Don't you think?
Sublimation. Yeah, it's a real thing. It's a
Yeah,
word. Sublime.
that's what I'm banking on.
Okay. You're resting your faith in sublimation. Remember
That
that?
is a
Wasn't that
big
a
word.
band when we were in high school? Sublime.
Sublime was, yeah.
Was it a song?
Pop rock. kind of
Yeah.
in the time of Matchbox 20
Yeah.
and um, who else? Lincoln Park,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
those cool guys.
Which it was a cool name, and then it realized like, why did you name yourself after a term that describes the metamorphosis or like changing state
Sublime.
directly from solid to gaseous and skipping the liquid stage?
I did not think that's what the
Yeah,
name meant. I thought it
it
was like
is.
almost lime, but not quite lime.
Yeah. Well, then it
Just
became like a
sub.
term, like sublime, like undercover cool, like real, like relaxed chill, sublime. Maybe that's the
That
definition of it as
fits.
well, but I think it's also the process of water moving directly from from a solid state to a gaseous state and skipping a liquid state in between. It's like evaporation below freezing point. Anyway, that is going to enable you to plant. Got it.
We're
Makes
gonna
sense.
hope so.
Yeah, no, I think you're
Yeah.
probably right. You're probably right. You're probably
Yeah.
right. Uh, I'm also glad that I'm done planting. But what are you planting?
A pasture.
Ah,
Yes.
cool.
A native pasture.
Really?
Native
Where?
grass. Yeah, yeah.
Where at?
So it's this back 12-acre corner of
Wow.
a farm that all around it is pasture.
Yeah.
And so for the last 3 years, I've been running a hot wire around this cornfield and then expecting my brother to drive the combine over a creek crossing and get, like
Yeah.
it's a pain in the butt corner piece that just, it's going to go back to grass and we're just going to be done with it. And,
That's cool.
which is, yeah, it is, it's fine. When you run, this is such a small scale scenario, but you run the numbers of this being a really productive piece of farm ground, and it is. It's great farm ground and sits nice, lays good. It is much more profitable to still run to have crops on there, but
Yeah.
just the ease of it is not worth it.
Yeah.
It's a pain in the butt. Going through the pasture every time you have to plant, spray, it's just not convenient. So
Yeah.
we
That's
did a
cool.
little bit of an equip project on this pasture, and so
Hmm.
it ties into the rest of the grazing program, and we've got an opportunity to run a little bit bigger group of cows out there too. So I think when you factor in that stuff, we could only run about 18 cows on that pasture anyway. So now we get another 12 acres, which now we can run maybe
Four
23,
cows.
24. So probably a little bit more efficient with a bull.
Yeah.
I
Bull
don't know.
efficiency, my favorite topic.
There you go. Yeah,
Bull
ways to
efficiency.
justify it is what
Hmm.
I'm doing. Yeah.
Bull efficiency. We should do a whole. I don't know who would do this because the people that are really into talking about this are mostly people that sell bulls and they don't really want to talk about bull efficiency like too much. Like yeah,
Yeah.
like buy less of my bulls, please. Use them way more efficiently. But it's a great topic. And I ABS used to have a on their catalog every year. I haven't seen it for a while, I don't think. Uh, a chart of like annual bull cost based on what you pay for a bull cost of feed depreciation. It's
Yeah.
so much money per cow. Like it's a sub mind-boggling amount per cow. Like 125 is super cheap. $300 a cow is not out of the question.
I
That's
believe that.
insane. It's insane.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, if you don't get what's the average life expectancy of a bull? Could you say 4 years? It seems like sometimes
No,
that's pushing it.
no,
Yeah,
no
that
way.
means you have some probably getting to age 7 or 8, and that doesn't happen.
It was
I
like
mean, if the average is 4,
yeah,
because a
half
lot of
of
them it's
like
2.
35 to 40% of them would have to get to 7, 8 years old, and I
Yeah,
just don't see it. And if that
yeah.
happens on your place, that's great. It's good for you.
So it's probably 2.5 is
Yeah.
probably the average.
And the best way to get them to 7 or 8 is to like buy virgin 2-year-olds, which is like okay, then now your average. You have to adjust your average because you're not getting that many seasons out of them anyway.
Yeah,
Or not virgin
I
twos,
could
but just used twos, whatever.
an old.
But
Yeah,
developed twos. I know guys that like to run 2-year-olds didn't have a great option. They didn't think to buy 2-year-olds, so they'll buy 20, 15, 20 yearlings and
yeah,
just run them on pasture and develop their own 2-year-olds. Not even use them. Not
yeah.
even use them.
That's yep. It's not a
I
bad.
mean, it's a way to
I
make your own 2-year-olds. Yeah.
yeah. What is the average feed cost per year of a bull?
Oh, if it's $700 for a cow, it's gonna
Yeah, I was gonna
be
say.
$1,200 for a bull, 1,000
Yeah,
more.
that's
Things
way
ain't so
high,
much. I
but
mean, they're weighing 2,200 pounds, 2,000 pounds.
yeah.
They're technically, what are they on an AUM? They're 1.4 AUMs, 1.5.
I
I'm trying to look
suppose
that up.
1,600 pound bull on average.
Anyway, so let's
Uh,
say
yeah, we've kind of gone to raising our own, and
1.3,
that
1.3.
too is it's a big pain in the butt because you've got these bull calves that now almost need its own pen because they can't go
Yeah,
with the mature bulls, but their their salvage value is so good too that it's like let's just cycle through them, and even at the end
right.
of the breeding season, if we put a little weight on them in the winter, even if we shipped them after that first year, it's in line with selling them as an 800-pound calf. So
I know. Oh, that like 4 to 5. It's hard. It's hard to keep them after that 4 to 5 when they're fully mature right now. I mean, they were
yeah,
bringing $3,000, $3,500 a piece.
yep,
Now
yep.
you skip 5 months of feeding. You can buy something from a guy for $5,000 to freshen it back up that he's going to deliver to you the 1st of June. You don't have to deal with them all winter. It's pretty attractive trading in. Anyway, but
Trading
like,
in.
so you being able to run, I'm gonna say like on average, like I know you're raising your own stuff, and so probably it's lower, but let's say on average it's like $200 per cow. It's like $200 per wean calf that you have into or exposed cow into bull cost. And so you running 4 more cows, 5 more cows on that pasture, that 12 acres, that's saving $1,000. Basically, it's running a group of those that set of cows $1,000 cheaper, which is already $100 an acre value on that pasture.
There we go.
a hundred
Yeah.
dollars an acre value. I mean, we get really caught up on the how much per acre, this and that. Like, there's a couple of efficiency things that a little bit of efficiency goes a long, long ways.
Thank you. I'm going to add $100 to my pasture seeding budget for
Tell your
more
bank
income
that.
because of bull efficiency.
It's true. It's true.
It's true.
Tell your banker that. Get him on it.
There we go.
Okay. What is in your mix? Tell me what's in your mix. What's the most exciting? What are the three things that you're like every mix in my area should have these 3 or 4 things? And then what's something
Ooh.
exciting that you have in your mix that you don't maybe see much of that you want to see?
Okay. So this ground, it's pretty heavy ground. There isn't, I mean, it's a sandy, not even sandy, silty loam
Mm-hmm.
piece of ground. So we did a heavy percentage of big blue and Indian grass. So tall native warm seasons that'll actually be supported by good ground and fertility there. We still put in a little bit of little blue side oats and blue grama for short mid-season or mid-height warm season native grasses. And that is probably the majority. It's probably 70% warm season grasses. And then we did use some western wheat, green needle, Virginia wild rye, and Canada wild rye. I like diversity, so we kind of
Yeah.
threw everything at it. I'm not a huge fan of the wild ryes, but they will
But they
do good
go
on
away.
heavy ground.
Yeah, and they'll
Yeah,
go
the first
away.
2 years are going to be there, and then after that,
They'll
you're
go
probably
away.
not going to see
Not go
much.
away completely, but they'll be there. And
Yeah,
I wonder if they
easy
still
to establish.
exist for like other transitional type environments. Let's say you have like a wallow spot or like put a mineral feeder out there for too many times in a row. I wonder if those wild rice don't come back and help in other transitional periods, digging a water line or something like that. But
Yeah,
yeah, there's so
that's true.
it's so much easier to look at those things with a wild rain at the first 2 3 years because those
Because you
things
have
just
something.
yeah you have something that looks really good compared to the other stuff. But then
Yeah.
they just kind of let the other stuff have their way. Okay, Forbes, any
Purple prairie
Forbes?
clover.
Purple prairie clover, my favorite Forb. I think it's my
Mine too.
favorite Forb.
We did quite a bit of purple prairie clover. We actually used Sicer milkvetch in there too, which is
Okay.
not a native legume, but I'm a fan of that one. It's quite aggressive. Once it's there, it's going to creep and vine up, but palatability is awesome. It's a bloat-free legume. It's pretty hardy. It's just super persistent. So
Mm-hmm.
that was the introduced one in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it.
Well, that's it. Just those
Yeah,
two?
just those two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, get out there what you want. You'll get goldenrod eventually. Don't worry.
I've
You'll get
got a
gold.
lot of goldenrod in that pasture.
Yeah.
It's a native pasture that goes all around it, and it is unbelievable as far as forb diversity out there
Really?
and broadly. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Huh.
Yep, yep.
What'll be?
Prairie onion grows like crazy in that one.
Well, it was a prairie onion year, wasn't it?
Might have been. Yeah, it might have been.
I don't know that I've ever seen prairie onion before, and I saw it a bunch of times. Ansley May,
Okay.
like 3 or 4 different pastures, found it a
Yep.
bunch. So I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe it happens all the time. I just really noticed prairie onion this year.
Yeah, it must have been the year.
Very prominent. Very prominent. Okay, well that's cool. What's
So yeah,
that's your big planting project to get the
that's
drill
it.
coming
Then we're
in.
done.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep. Check her off. Be done.
Okay. All right. Well
You,
then you're set. Then that's
then
your
we're
last
set.
project.
And I think so. Like relating that back to Milborn, Renovo, things coming on here, and with you, like that's kind of how it feels with the rest of everybody too. It's like everybody might have a little bit of, not everybody. We have just a few seeding projects coming in for dormant seeding projects to finish up the year,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're talking about next year.
Yep.
And
It's quickly moving into next year planting, isn't it?
we've got a lot of interest in some more forages for next year. That
Okay.
might be the theme of some of these like winter meetings that we're talking to people about. It's like, all right, cow pishes are up. Um, Maybe I'm
Yep.
feeding calves longer, but whatever it is, I'm going to make more feed this year and plant less harvestable grains. So talking about pea oat, pea barley for spring planted stuff, triticale for spring planted stuff. But
Yep.
when we get west of here, it's all millets and sorghums and sedans, and that we've had a lot of pre-orders on that stuff already.
Well, that's good. Well, I don't know. I think everybody's diverging. People are diverging. I kind of don't like to see it because it reminds me more of what happened in maybe a generation ago in Kansas, Oklahoma. But I'm seeing divergence, right? So there was a. Did I tell you about this? There was a really big chunk
No.
of a good chunk of pasture north of us, 8 miles that sold here. It's
Okay.
1,280 acres, so it's two sections, and 1,000 acres of contiguous native grass, 8 miles away from home. Like
Wow.
no fence line in the middle, no road, no abandoned road, just 1,000 acres, one fence around it, like two cross fences. Spring watered, pretty nice piece. Ton of structure. It was pretty cool. So we tried to make a run at it, but like it doesn't work real well to try and pencil that stuff. So like the broader family kind of put some resources together and put in what ended up being a lowball bid. Anyway, it sells. There was 200 acres, some acres of farm ground with it. That sells for 10,000 an acre, which is also like all-time record high for our area by about $3,000 an acre in the last 10 months. Is all that stuff has ever brought that much. Guy that bought the farm ground, bought this. I think it was like 4,500 or 4,000 across the board for this pasture, which is insane when you look at like
Yeah, it
interest.
is.
It's like as pasture, that's
Wow.
$350 an acre a year in interest, which is 3.5 times rent. Okay, plus you got to do maintenance. Gonna break the whole thing. Gonna put dams in the streams and irrigate out of that. He's gonna tile, irrigate the whole thing. Which he's gonna have like the structure's so big. The meadows in this thing are large enough that you almost have to like farm the meadows. And then you have like all these like random fields and pivots everywhere in this 1,000 acres. It's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be crazy.
Well,
But like
that's
some
what
people
causes
are.
division.
I
It's
know.
that part.
I know.
Ah, that's
So
horrible.
I know, but what do you do?
I know.
So anyway, like, and then you have some people. Well, I mean, the people that can pivot, the people that can diversify, are actually running the numbers. And it's like, I can do something different. I can run more cows. I can put up more feed. The beef cow thing is working for me, or whatever you got going on. You can pivot into that, and you respond to it. And then you have people like you know, this group, and this is allegedly, but they're like, no, we crop farm. We got to crop farm more. So just more crop farm. We're not penciling out doing anything different. We're not penciling out putting up feed and cows. Can't do it. We're going to just figure out how to crop farm. There are people who are doing that. There's been more pasture broke up around me in the last 2 years than I can ever remember. And it's a
Yeah.
combination of retiring and whatever, but it's definitely not being signaled by profitability of crops. It's like something different's going on. Oh, it's just going to make that problem worse. But anyway, like I think it's good, but the people that can diversify should diversify because there's so many people that are positioned that they can't. And that's what I was saying is that there's less a percent of operations that can diversify, that think that they can diversify, think that they can is probably a better way to put it,
Yeah.
than there was a while back.
So this almost leads us into talking about politics in the future. What are we, 10, 12 days past the election? And with this new election and some of the things that people are hearing as far as rumors coming down and this cabinet being made, that too could also lead to more division in agriculture. Don't you think? When you think about what could be coming and um, these large conventional production ag not product conventional farmers
I don't
that
even know
just
if it's
want
conventional. Yeah, I don't know what
well
it
what
is.
I don't know
It's
what
just
that is
like
either, and that's why I'm struggling for the word.
I think it's
Um,
main commodity it's not even commodity because most of us are producing commodities. It's like top three crop commodities. Row crop, probably row crop.
okay,
Non-diversified row crop maybe, but I don't
there
know
you
if
go.
that capitalizes it. I don't know if that it's something different because I think like conventional is a term that's almost been stolen to say that the most high tech stuff is what we're calling conventional. It's like, well, conventional is actually like a lot more what the regen people are doing. You know,
I know it's been a shift.
yeah.
It's the people. Okay, here's another way to describe this type of farmer. So they probably don't have. They've got a lot of hired help. They don't have a next generation in mind. Um, it's outside funding from other investors.
Mhm.
That type of farmer, and I think every county has somebody in their area farming like that. Um, I could almost see them not like what is to come with this next administration.
Well, I think they're kind of probably going to feel a little bit politically homeless in that just in the ag sector sphere. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, it's strange, but it's the manifestation of what we talked about before: 20 to 30 years of don't diversify, specialize, get really good at one thing, scale it, depend on outside labor. It's probably what we should call a corporate farm. And I know we don't like.
Yeah.
There's a lot of family incorporated farms and stuff. I don't think we need to get into a definition to describe it, and I have nothing against it. We've got friends that do it. We have neighbors that are farm in that capacity. It's fine. It's just that it doesn't give them a lot of flex, right? They've got a business plan that's pretty dependent on a status quo incentive structure,
Hmm.
federal crop insurance, biofuel subsidies, that kind of stuff to succeed. And I think that they might be looking at their future going, I'm not sure that's where the incentives are anymore, right? So Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner, longtime partner in Berkshire Hathaway, said, show me what the incentives are, and I can tell you the outcome, right? And so if you go back to 30 years and say, look, the incentives are going to be around tight rotations to maximize APH yields on the crops that have the most subsidy protection in corn and soybeans. And in other places, it's wheat, other places, it's canola, other places, it's cotton, whatever it is. But tight rotations to say, build your APHs fast, build your nest egg there, that someone else, other factions of the industry will build a demand complex for this no matter how much you produce. That was the incentives. And lo and behold, we have the outcome. It's like,
Hmm.
it's not a good or bad thing. It's just a very predictable thing. What if the incentives change?
Yeah.
That's
Let's
a
first
question.
talk about what do those incentives mean all the way down the line as far as outcomes for food and fuel and ultimately health of society, right? Because that's where this shift is starting with this next administration, and then we're going back up the chain
Mm-hmm.
to drive policy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's incentives to grow corn and soybean, right?
Yeah.
And then what we get from that is we get fuel, we get ethanol, which it's awesome, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I believe most everybody is on board with this. Um, we get a lot of corn byproducts, right?
Not everybody.
On the
Yeah.
well, not okay, but
I mean, like a
yeah, sure,
majority of
sure.
people in ag, but you can still find the people that said we never should have done ethanol. A
Yeah,
lot of ranchers are
it
like, we never should have done it.
all completely shifted
Yeah.
more profitability to corn, which mostly
Well,
I think that's good.
yeah.
Put it in it actually,
Yeah.
developed it.
Yeah.
But okay, so here's where I'm getting at, I guess, is the food side of that is really where people are going, okay, I'm not sure if this is really where we want to go with our society for human health.
Well, there was some unintended. Look, I think it's a really good thing if you're replacing plastic like fossil fuels and you're making plastic out of soybean oil. That's a really positive thing, right? But it's consistent with I don't know, anything you want to talk about as being, more regenerative, more cyclical, recycling, etc. Right? So that's good. Yeah, like make plastics out of soybean oil, out of corn oil, whatever. But then, you know, like there was things that just had to like, fall in the wake of we needed to use corn and soybeans for everything for this to work, right? And so we've been using them for everything we can think of, and we're still not like at profitable levels, right? We're still able to overproduce these things almost with any time we get good crops in a row. Or we lose a little bit of export market, we have a glut of corn and soybeans, and we're using them for everything. And then with this really crazy paradigm in human health, like I think is part of a bigger thing. I don't think it's only the seed oils. I don't think it's only high fructose corn syrup, and I don't think it's or only sugars. I think it's mostly those things, probably, but not all. Where we were sold a scam. I think one of the biggest scams in history, in the U.S. history, and it had global overreach, was that we were convinced to take our food. Well, we were convinced to eat fuel, right? We were convinced to eat vegetable oils coming out of these seed oils as a healthy alternative to our other foods, which was animal-based fats and oils, to the point where we are now making fuel out of our food, right? Beef tallow
Right.
is going into, and it grinds my gears. And I've had this happen probably 4 or 5 times in the last few years, where people are legitimately like, "Oh, don't think that the biofuels agenda doesn't have something for livestock. We would love to make all the green biodiesel we can out of beef tallow. It's a wonderful. It makes the best fuel." Like people will like be economists, whatever, will celebrate this thing. I was like, that is the worst celebration of all time. We are taking one of the highest quality foods known to history, and you're excited because we can buy, instead of rendering it, instead of putting it into a landfill or into fertilizer, we can now burn in our cars, and then we're taking the stuff that should go into our cars and pickups and tractors and soybean oil and eating it. And the whole thing is like the empty calorie concept. Empty calories are now brought up as like a problem, right? Empty calories are a problem.
Right.
Empty calories were, like you said, show me what the incentives are and I'll show you the outcome. Empty calories were the desired position of the 1990s and 1980s, right? Is like, how can we eat? How can we physically fill our bellies, thinking of ourselves in such a simple, like our stomach has to be a physical fullness to get full. Remember all the people, I mean, this probably still happens, but that shrink their stomachs to say like, oh, this is what, and then now we're like, no, satiety can be achieved by a very, very small amount of like highly nutrient dense food like jerky or, cheese sticks, yogurt, whatever. Like satiety isn't a physical fullness. How did we think for 30 years that we were such a simple complex that we could just physically fill our belly with empty calories and we wouldn't have to eat anymore and that would be a good thing? So the point of like the vegetable oils is that we don't digest them, right? So they pass through us undigested, okay? So then it's a good thing because we can eat salads and we can put that on there and we don't absorb as many calories, so it's a good thing. Like it's good to have food that doesn't have any nutrients. That was what we were thinking. Now we're
Hmm.
stuck with this. Now it's like, well, that's a bad idea. Like it's like, what if we said, we just eat like packing peanuts, right? Those styrofoam packing peanuts. It's good because it'll physically fill your stomach up, but you don't get any calories from it. Like there was a point in time where I could see that actually being a solution to people to trying to stay healthy. It's so insane. So the empty calorie thing led to is the bigger thing. But anyway, so it fit the bill. What we were offering fit the bill in seed oils. So I don't know. And honestly, like it doesn't. This isn't anti-corn or anti-soybeans. The corn and soybean like market would benefit so much from people not using these things ever again. High fructose corn syrup is a little different, but like the other things, if people use lard and beef tallow instead of soybean oil, or corn oil, corn demand would be outrageously high, right? It would
Why?
because we'd have to produce more animals that
Oh, you think
eat
beef
corn and soybeans. Yeah,
production would have to increase? Gotcha. Sure.
absolutely have to
Sure.
increase. Yeah. And the biggest loser of actually making beef tallow a valuable ingredient again is literally this also created the mechanism by which importing beef became super profitable. Okay, because most of the imported beef is extremely lean, like 90 to
Ah.
96% chemically lean beef. And so you can bring it in, and then you have all this like tallow, and like 50/50s, but probably some stuff that's even less than that, right? That you can grind in. And so you can make a 73% chunk chub of hamburger at a cheap retailer, and you can make that by taking tallow and trim,
Hmm.
which is so cheap because we produce it in abundance, and it's literally best case scenarios to go into biodiesel, and most likely scenarios to go into a fertilizer rendering or landfill at a cost center to the packer. And you can take that and you can bring this cheap the beef in. You can pay a little bit more for it. You can blend it because you have a free ingredient to
Right.
now make a product. So you're adding dollars per pound to the tallow and to the trim by bringing in a super lean beef from elsewhere. So what happens if we actually render the tallow and sell it as food in the United States, and that becomes like if tallow becomes 4 times more expensive than it is today, it actually significantly decreases the value proposition for imported beef. Like it's amazing how like our whole system, again, go back to like Charlie Munger.
Yeah.
Show me the incentives and I can tell you the outcome. And like we're living in the outcome from what the incentives were, which was to, I mean, there was no incentive to use beef tallow for anything. And there was for seed oils. So now we're living it.
Yeah. Okay, so that's one piece of it. So what about we talk about like the incentive structure possibly shifting away from, who if it's some insurance things, if it's going to shift to probably doing also more soil health practices, maybe promoting more diversity of different crops, maybe incentivizing other crops slightly more than the mainstream crops.
Yeah. I'm not I'm trying to think of a scenario, Justin, of like in our part of the world, Northern Plains at least, where land use diversity isn't almost 95 lockstep with soil health at the same time. I'm trying to think of a scenario where when we achieve land use diversity and diversity of commodity production in an area, it isn't almost exactly the same journey as someone would be on if they were just looking for best soil health outcomes, right? So I think that there's an inherent the less reliance or less incentive structure on just a few things is going to lend itself to to broader production of diverse things. So the problem is, so then it's doubly like the tariffs that are going to be imposed on other countries are going to be there's going to be retaliatory tariffs. Retaliatory tariffs are almost not exclusively, but like very substantially going to disproportionately affect agriculture commodities,
For sure.
especially the things that we export. And what do we export? Corn.
A lot of beans.
Sorry, I shouldn't say corn. Lead with soybeans.
Yep.
Yes, soybeans, wheat, cotton, some corn products. Yes, pork, chicken. Like it's all the things that we. It's like the top 4 or 5 commodities that are heavily subsidized, and then it's CAFO production. That's what's so those are going to get hurt at the same time that there may be some loss. Dairy, should ask dairy to that.
Okay.
And there's some other things like almonds. Like almonds markets are already tanked. 80% of almonds get exported out of the country, I guess. That could just get decimated. That could just almost go away. Not go away, but like, wreak havoc in California and things like that. So anyway, the things that we're net importers on, beef and lamb, and we're like, okay, we're all in a hurry to get rid of our pasture, and then the incentive structure is going to change from an arbitrarily, artificially weak dollar over the course of 20, 30 years that we did to increase globalization. That's changed as of recently anyway. And
Hmm.
then the dollar's so much stronger than it was. And then now we're going to have a tariff isolationist viewpoint to where the incentive has been for the high exporting commodities, both through subsidies and through demand and through currency manipulation. I wouldn't say manipulation, but just strategy. And then now it's going to flip. So now we're going to be like net short on beef and especially lamb.
I like the sound of that.
Well, yeah.
But
I mean,
but what I mean, if I'm that person, that corn and soybean farmer that only plants corn and soybeans, why am I excited for the Trump administration?
I'm not sure. I don't know if you
Okay.
should be.
Yeah. Uh,
I don't know if
yeah.
he should be. And I've talked to a lot of people, not a lot of people about this, but like just watching what happens on X and stuff. I think there's a lot of people that are in the position that know that they might be disproportionately hurt, or there might be some changes through this that are kind of
Hmm.
like, I get it though. Like I've been successful. This has been good for me and my family. Also, there is something. There is something about this that's not quite right. It's not quite perfect, right? There is a way to change this. Like I am being incentivized, and I'm doing things that I'm just not quite okay with. Like,
I
okay,
okay, that actually I can see that 100% with most everybody that I, engage with, right?
yeah,
Like, um, that's your job, that's your role, that's the way your land and your whole farm is set up.
yeah.
But yeah, it
It's an age thing though. Like
yeah,
not
maybe.
everybody would want that. Sorry,
Yeah.
maybe that's not where we were
Yeah.
going with this, but
That is
like
I agree with that.
If I'm 70, I don't want the rules to change at all. Like I don't.
True.
If I'm
You're
65, I don't
kind
want the
of
rules changing.
yeah.
And I feel like the rules are going to change at some point in our lifetime anyway, because they can't. No one maintains the same incentive structure. No one keeps the rules of the game this consistent for this long on almost anything. It's always going to change. And so, if we're going to change the rules of the game, let's do it now, because I don't want them to change when I'm 65. Is that selfish? And I understand completely if someone's 65, it's like, you guys are all full of crap. I hope they don't change anything and they pass like a 50-year farm bill, everything stays. It's like, well, of course. You responded to the incentives and you don't want them to change now.
Hmm.
I don't think they're going to last for 30 years. I don't think the current farm policy and prioritization is going to last that long, for 30, 40 years. Another generation and a half in, and I think the plot is lost on what we're trying to do out here in the country from a society standpoint. So I think that rules maybe should just change now, and we can adapt. We can all adapt to them faster.
So we've heard Trump say that some of the Green New Deal bill was just it was garbage. It made no sense. It was overreach and excess spending by government. We've heard Elon Musk say that he's just if he's got the opportunity to have government spending efficiencies, he's going to cut, 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 cut. How does those two things come into line with what we're saying as far as changing the rules with ag policy and still developing, you know, promoting what we're talking about, crop diversity, soil health practices. How do those come into line?
Yeah. Well, there in agriculture especially, there's an absolute impossible scenario that's going to go out. So there's three main priority groups and campaign promises that need to come happen from this administration. And it's like first and foremost, and I think this is true. Trump takes care of his base. It's what a populist does anyway. And there's no more clear base that supported him through the last three elections than rural
Rural
folks in
America.
rural
Yeah.
states, right?
Yep.
Rural America is the heart of this. Now, that's not probably what put him over the top this time around, but that's his base. Okay, so he's not going to punish his base by sweeping in and taking out all ag subsidies, because it would
Yep.
create a firestorm in the countryside. I mean, things aren't real good in that part, our part of the world anyway, from a commodity crop standpoint. Unless you're a beef cow calf producer, things are tough already. So he can't come in and take all those things away. However, he has promised, like the RFK Make America Healthy Again coalition. And this is how he won the Young vote. This is how he won the Young vote. It's a combination of Vivek and Elon and Charlie Kirk over here, and then the Mahat, like Nicole Shanahan and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. coalition came in, brought such a diverse, you know, unique perspective to this. And then it was the start of like everybody else that joined in afterwards. Right after RFK Jr. came in, it was like, okay, now this is going to be a coalition. So now Tulsi
Yeah.
comes in, and now, um, Elon and everybody else. So it's all started from that tremendous amount of loyalty. And he said over and over again, we're going to let RFK Jr. have some say, not only on health and human services where he's going to be at, but some crossover say in agriculture policy, because it doesn't make sense to be able to try and fix the dietary guidelines and regulations and still have, on a percentage basis, the most subsidized food, either on what we're supporting the purchase of and what we're supporting the commodity, like the production of, be the things that are kind of the unhealthy agents. Okay. So he's got to make that crowd happy. And then at the same time, there's this like government efficiency, low cost, we're going to like slash the federal government by 75% type group. And all those three things are he's supposed to make all of those happy at the same time. The American farmer, rural constituent, the Make America Healthy Again, and the Doge, Department of Government Efficiency camp. Okay, it's not possible. It's almost impossible to do two of those things. It's really impossible to do three of those things. So who's he gonna keep out of there? And I think he's more likely to keep the Department of Government Efficiency out of the agricultural realm for now, because it is largely funding, rural America through crop, so through subsidies in agriculture, and then as well, the lowest income Americans, which he actually made huge demographic change like shifts with, so that are on food stamps and things like that. So I think he just keeps that group away. So like while total spending may go down in other places, they'll focus that on Department of Education, Health and Human Services, military, whatever it is. I think that government efficiency is just kind of like, don't look at USDA for now. Okay, just leave it alone. Let's fix other things. Okay, then you have the other two camps. So how do you could do like a full New Zealand and just like slash all the subsidies and everything goes back to the free market. When that happens, pasture fed dairies, lamb operations, and beef operations went through the roof and commodity agriculture went down. Like annual cropland acres crashed into perennial rotations of grazing animals when New Zealand got rid of crop subsidies, right? It's a perfect example. That's not going to happen because you can't do that right now because the bottom will fall out, right? You take away some of these propped up mechanisms and the bottom will fall out. In rural America, you can't hurt those people that bad. He also is going to have a hard time doing an MFP type payment where he just pays people $1.72 per bushel for soybeans that they produce because the market got lower because of tariffs, right? That is going to like fly in the face of the Maha group, which is saying you're really going to pay
Yeah.
all those people just hundreds of thousands of dollars for lost revenue on the crops that we also think are causing some unhealthy stuff. So I don't know. So then how do you rectify those two? And the easiest way to do it, if you're not worried about government spending, is to just counteract the current subsidies with a new set of subsidies that actually the subsidies then compete for the intention and the incentives of the American farmer, and saying this off ramp, it's either going to have to be like a cold turkey chop and block subsidy at the top from the conventional farmers, or it's going to have to be an off ramp with similar competing subsidies that allow people to play the game differently in the same time. Sorry, that was I
It-
like third time I've lectured this
it's beautiful.
podcast. Sorry.
I actually love it. So, okay, let's say we do see that shift. We've got 4 years. Does this really actually change? Is there actually a paradigm shift to human health, diversity on the landscape? Does the American farmer look different in 4 years?
I don't know if it looks different in 4 years, but there is some cataclysmic, whatever you say that word, catastrophic, not catastrophic. There is, I don't know if it looks different in 4 years, but I think the current farm bill, the farm today looks different because of the 1996 Freedom to Farm Act, right? And I
Yeah,
don't think the farm looked different in 2000 from the
sure.
1996 Farm Bill, but it certainly does from today. Okay, I don't think that the average farm looked very different in from federally subsidized crop insurance, in the 1990 to 1992 range, 4 or 5 years after it was came into place. But it certainly looks different today. It certainly behaves different today. So I don't know if in 4 years it does, but I would say that this is the first time I've ever really looked at and say the incentive structure. The last five farm bills, six farm bills have had slight nuance to them, but the incentive structure has not changed. It's
Hmm.
there's two holy sacraments of farm policy in the U.S., and it's federally subsidized crop insurance and renewable fuel, mandates for biofuels. And so I feel like this is the first time where the Ark of the Covenant can be opened and those two things can be examined without everybody in Washington D.C. having lightning strike through the center of their body and dying like in Indiana Jones. Is that fair? I don't know. Like I feel like it's true. Like you can't look at that. If you want to be in a farm policy discussion and be taken seriously in the last 20 years, you can't talk about opening the ark. And those two things
Yeah,
are embedded in there and you
yeah,
can't
they
you
are.
can't do it. It's like it's the only thing everybody agrees on for the most part. And they
Yeah.
might get looked at now.
Huh. That was fantastic. I'm glad we went there. I didn't know if we were going to get into it that deep, but I do believe that that's what's on people's mind right now.
I
and
don't
it's
know anything. If you thought I was coming across as an expert, I have no idea if any of this is right or not. But I'm just trying to like analyze the promises that have been made and what
yeah,
needs to happen next. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that. The only way to do it is to spend more money and keep the financial conservatives at bay and just say we're going to spend a lot more money in ag because the off ramp of like the RFK is talking about for commodity ag production, like that's ugly right now. That's ugly. It's going to be very bumpy off ramp. So I don't. Maybe they can slow the speeds down a little bit on some of the subsidies. You know, we can take the speed limit down on the interstate from 85 one direction to, put up some cones, get people slowing down 60, 65 over some time. But that off ramp, if it's just cold turkey subsidies, is just I mean, it's like piling up oversize in a line coming off the interstate and expecting people to hit it at 85 miles an hour and survive. Like they won't. So that off ramp's going to take a while to build.
yep, I like it.
Anyway, and so actually, there was a really good post. I was going to respond, but I don't usually do that very often. But on X, like Jason Mock actually got called a hypocrite this weekend because someone was like, you talk this big talk on all your regen ag stuff and all your polycropping and everything, but you're a corn soybean beneficiary of the system. You've CAFOs, that kind of stuff, and it's like, yeah, it's complicated, right? Like that is a part of me. My grandfather passed away this spring. My dad and grandfather built a wonderful operation. I like my kind of hippie farming stuff to do over here, but it's like in order for me to love myself and like what I enjoy and also love other people like my dad and grandpa and their legacy, I guess that turned me into someone that has to behave and be like a hypocrite. And I was like, yeah, it's true. Like we don't have
Hmm.
to, I guess I'd rather put that burden on myself to say I'm not throwing away anything that people are doing out there and saying that it's happening and it's wrong, or even, my dad or grandparents or whatever. I think that they were responding to the incentives placed in front of them to do
Yeah,
certain things that they did. And I think that's perfectly fair. If the incentives shift, we will shift as well. We're going to survive. That's the main thing. And we're going to try to thrive within that. But this is not a throwing away what we did the last 50 years.
yeah.
It just meant that we were
Well,
decent at figuring out how to work what works best.
yeah. That makes me think back to your one of your comments that you made earlier about we've got the system in place and we've been farming and we've been using these the subsidies and going along with what we're supposed to do in order to make it financially and keep this thing going. But at the same time, man, it always hasn't felt completely right.
Yeah.
But this is our business, so we have to do that. And yeah, I don't think anybody judges that either. I mean, I don't know why you would or how you could. It's just the way it is, and so
Yeah.
you do what you have to within the parameters that you have at your hand. And but if there's an option to do something slightly better and make you feel good about it, right? Like rest
Yeah.
easy at night about it. Well, maybe I kind of lean this way a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I thought we were in trouble 2 years ago when we were in farm bill discussions, and everybody's like, "Well, we don't want anything new in the farm bill. The farm bill is almost perfect." Like the big fight was whether they should increase reference prices or not, which would cost some money, which is basically a way of like directly subsidizing a bottom line base revenue per
Yeah,
farm per
that's
year.
we
You know what
don't
I
want
mean? It's
that.
like,
Yeah,
okay,
that
so the
come on.
only thing that you
Where's the
want
fun
is
of
just
that?
a better backdrop to say, I want to know that if I get a chance, well, if I get a rental agreement signed with a tenant on this farm, and maybe I don't even plant, I get this big of a check. If I
Yeah,
plant, I get this big of a check. Okay. And then I want those two levels to just increase, not anything else, just get bigger as we go. Okay. If that's all that you want to fix in an entire 5 year package, then you pretty much everybody in what we want to call conventional ag or what we big commodity ag got everything that they wanted. And that's probably your biggest red flag of like, okay, that's probably the biggest reason there to like upset the apple cart a little bit is that
yep.
if the commodity groups, not the farmers, but like the commodity groups have everything that they want, probably giving them too much.
Very true. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's insane to me that there's I don't know if it's checkoff or policy dollars, but corn soybean associations running ads to in the defense of certain herbicides, like right, like there's an entire pack like dedicated that people, if you go to Commodity Classic and you're like, oh, come to this meeting, and it's like, oh, we're raising money for this pack, if you want to donate, like, what do you do? And then you read into it, and just basically it says, I want to keep atrazine on the market. I was like, of all the things that I could give like $200 to, should I give it to an organization whose sole purpose is to make sure that I have access to atrazine next year? Like, is that anywhere near the
Right.
top 10,000 of my priorities? I don't know. I mean, it's like the system has gotten to be really defensive of that, of the status quo.
Yeah. Well, that for sure is probably something we're going to see is restricted chemical use. Um,
Well, but then
I,
like the farthest right, if you want to like follow the political spectrum, you have the people on the farthest right now that are almost more opposed to those type of chemistry
it's true.
than the ideological left, and right. So the conservatives are now the big tent, right? So there's a more diverse ideological group than it was 20 years ago. It was a very
Hmm.
tight evangelical ideology 20 years ago, the Conservative Party. Now it's the big tent. It's what the Democrats were. Very, very large amount of diversity of thought. And so you have both the people who have relied on the Republican administrations in the past to be the most business friendly and the most deregulatory environment to get things approved, to be less strict on pesticide both approvals and relicensing. Okay, that's the Conservative Party. Also, the people. I mean, like Alex's Jones's famous "The Frogs Are Turning Gay" clip is about atrazine. Okay, it's atrazine. That's what he's talking about there, right? And so you've got that group, which is also probably firmly into the Republican Party voting base now, and so you've got everything in there, and
Yeah.
there may be as much infighting on ideological differences within the conservative group as there is between the conservatives and the Democrats. Democrats have almost become groupthink, right? It's
For sure.
very consistent to figure out what their ideologies are. And the
Yeah.
Overton window on what you're allowed to think in the Democratic Party, I think, this is speculation, is extremely narrow and it's extremely wide in the free speech party of the Republicans. So I'm not sure that we can consistently gauge what we're going to get out of this administration and what we're going to do. Okay, Secretary of Ag pick, as we're kind of wrapping up here because I've been blabbing for an hour. Sorry about that. So he's got to pick a Secretary of Ag. So his cabinet picks so far have been all over the board, right? Anywhere from wild cards to very stable picks to loyalists, a lot of loyalists,
Yeah.
I would
Yeah. For
say.
sure.
But then there's a Marco
That's been the
Rubio,
theme.
like which has been
Yeah,
a
but he's
rival
been
in the past and
but a supporter still. Same.
a supporter. Better supporter than John Thune, huh? Oof. Anyway, John Thune, Senate Majority Leader.
That's
Man, they were quick to
awesome.
find all of his old Trump tweets, though, huh? I don't know if you saw those, but
I
he
did
got in
not see
trouble for
those.
that. Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Oops.
Well, yeah. He had a lot of. He was not an early and strong supporter of Donald Trump. Let's just say that
Many
real quick.
weren't though. Too.
Yeah,
That's not. Yeah.
it's not okay. But like Lee Zeldin, right? So Lee Zeldin, who's in charge of the EPA, right? Yeah, EPA as EPA director, Lee Zeldin. I think I'm getting this right. Yeah, it is. Okay, so he's from New York. He actually filed a. So this is where like renewable fuel standards come in. Like EPA is one of those things that's really important to agriculture in rural
Yeah.
areas,
Big time.
but we don't talk about as much. But if you're in public policy, you follow it very closely. Lee Zeldin gets announced as Trump's pick, right? He has to get confirmed and all that stuff for EPA. His opening line, like his communication to the world about this is happening, is basically, "Want to thank Trump for allowing me to be, this pick, and like my priority as EPA director, the Environmental Protection Agency. My priority as EPA director is to make the U.S. a global dominant player in energy production, including oil and natural gas." It's like, oh, okay, that's not what the EPA director normally says when they get tapped for that job. Okay,
That's why he got picked though.
let's go. I
He's
got
gonna
picked.
support the liquid gold.
Yeah, in 2015, I don't know if it was a lawsuit or if it was a bill, but he actually raised questions about the renewable fuel standard, right? About corn ethanol, right? So the liquid gold thing sounds great to like not real friendly to biofuels. Okay, so like we don't need biofuels anymore. Okay, so within this priority, so then what happens to them? I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure for a while rural South Dakota looks like rural Albania without ethanol plants running. You know, like we go back to corn burning stoves because we can't afford to buy natural gas, even if it's cheap. Because corn's so cheap. What? Okay, that's not real friendly to the system, and so there's already some indications that there's going to be a few uphill battles for commodity ag within some of the other picks. And I think that even if it goes back to being one of the, Ted McKinney's, Kip Toms, like the early names that get listed, even if it does, they're gonna have a totally different job than they thought that it was gonna be 3 months ago before RFK came in. They're gonna have a much more restricted agenda, I think, on what they can and what they can't support and how it's going to interact with that. So if the
Yeah.
incentive structure changes that way, then maybe we see grazing systems, which have been vilified, which are now in the dead center of support. It's the least subsidized part of agriculture, right? So grazing systems, it is the least dependent on the Maha, chemical, pesticide, whatever. It's the easiest to decouple from modern technology. It's like it's very very easy, right? You basically just cut back on parasiticides. That's it. By goats to control
Hmm.
brush and trees. And it's also really consistent with the health agenda of what people want to be eating. So the grazing systems, which were really were vilified as being, well, we're not controlling the nutrients, we're not getting capture of the manure, they're just pooping in the streams, now has become the main thing that's going to be focused on. But I just don't know how they change the incentives without, crapping in everybody's bed.
Yeah. Yeah. What a
So,
shift.
so I think like there's been some really crazy names, like Jimmy Emmons has been brought up. That's not crazy, but out of there, Thomas Massey, like a way libertarian. Like he shouldn't. I mean, he caucuses in the Republican Party, but he's a libertarian congressman from Kentucky.
Okay.
Some of those are very very different picks from
Hmm.
what people thought it would be. But even if it's one of the mainstream people, if Kip Tom gets it, I think Kip Tom is still very much. Then there's also this like loyalist camp. Like you got like a Charles Herbster from Nebraska who's been a very strong Trump loyalist. So it depends on anything's at play. It's really hard to narrow down who Secretary of Ag is going to be because you have loyalists, wild cards, and and kind of some of the stable picks all being selected throughout this process. So
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting.
yeah, we could know in
And
a
the
few
best thing
days.
is we'll probably continue to do the things we want to do the way we do it and
Yeah.
be pretty okay. You
Yeah,
know,
I
like
think so too. I don't expect anything drastic to change
yeah,
overnight. What I'm saying is that what is interesting is that what happens today has a lot more to do with what ag looks like 30 years from now than it
exactly.
does
Yeah.
3 years from now.
Yep. Yep.
So these changes will be likely subtle, but it could change the trajectory.
Yeah. It's exciting. I think it's a great time to be an egg. I think it's as long as you're willing to change and see the positives and
Hmm.
adapt, let's go. I'm all in.
Let's go. Okay. Thanks for joining, everybody.
Jared, thanks for being a guest on the podcast today.
I feel like
I
I was
really
the guest.
appreciate
I feel
your
like I
political
missed last
outlook.
time, and I was the guest. Sorry. Anyway,
No, this is awesome. I no, your intelligence on this is absolutely spot on, perfect, detailed, and I think our listeners also get a ton of value from it. So
I don't
it's
know if
good
it's
stuff.
intelligence. It's just like maybe spending too much time on X. You could be this way too, kids. Just try. Just get a
You know
follow a
what we
bunch
should have
of
done? We should
fringe
have we should
accounts on X.
yeah. We should have done a graze it, harvest it, rent it out with. We should have tied that into some sort of political policy future agenda. Like, how do we want this to go? And you've got to cut one. You got to maybe it was your triangle, right? We've got to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's formulate something like that. We'll know a little more information when we do the New Year predictions podcast. We'll see what new information we have and give everybody an
And
update
we'll
on
get
that.
Charles Herbster on.
Let's do it. Yeah,
Tie that
that's
into the
fine.
livestock side of thing, and we'll talk egg policy with him. And we'll put that on the graze it, harvest it, rent it out.
Yep. Let's try it. Okay.
All right. Thanks,
Thanks
Jared.
all. See you. Bye.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you. Bye.
Well, we hope you enjoyed another episode of the Roots and Ruminants podcast. Let us know what you thought of it. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all those social media things. And, if you ever have any questions, just give us a call. We've got a toll-free number here at 888-498-7333. Be glad to hear from you. Thank you.